Hello everyone, this is Papa Stalin, and today we have a very cool tower that functions similarly to Melting Furnace, but fulfills a different role on the battlefield. We are talking about Rotten Grove.
The forest has eyes.
Rotten Grove received major changes in ReVengeance mod, mainly of course to its name. I guess Rotten Forest could easily be confused with the level, so Rotten Grove it is. It also received substantial changes to its stats. Believe it or not, Rotten Grove now deals less damage, which considering its very weak damage output in vanilla could alarm some people. However, it now deals true damage and has way faster attack speed at levels 1, 2 and 3. Its other aspects, range, slow rate and cost, were changed slightly as well, but the most important change is still the damage. Even if DPS is slightly lower, having true damage in your arsenal is important, and gives Rotten Grove an edge over the Melting Furnace in some scenarios. However, the main difference between these two artillery towers is that Rotten Grove actually does not depend on its damage output, and doesn't make that its entire personality. If Melting Furnace is an expensive crowd control machine, Rotten Grove has a subtle role of a cheap artillery tower, dealing reliable damage, and also being good at slowing/stalling enemies. Now let's dissect both of these strengths. Rotten Grove is by far the cheapest artillery tower in the whole franchise, as it only costs 780 gold to get it to level 4. So you can use it in stages where you need some form of AoE but can't afford a full-blown artillery tower. Its damage output won't be great, in fact its single target DPS is the worst among towers in ReVengeance, but it deals true damage and it covers all enemies in an okay range. So if your goal is to have consistent damage for a cheap price, Rotten Grove can be a good choice. However, it truly shines when you use its stalling capabilities fully. It already slows enemies by default, but upgrades make it truly stand out in this role. Ensnaring Roots were made a lot more expensive and now don't last for as long, but they can now stun up to 8 enemies for 5 seconds, which can be absolutely huge. A short cooldown of 15 seconds means that you can consistently break up the enemy wave and make it a lot easier to deal with enemies one by one, so I always buy this upgrade first. Fog of Despair was completely reworked and now sends enemies back every 12 seconds. This, combined with the previous upgrade, can absolutely stall any enemy at once, and I would highly recommend buying both as soon as possible. You have to keep in mind that enemies are immune to repeated roots or fog, so you can't stall them indefinitely. Plus, Fog of Despair apparently doesn't work on enemies with more than 90% of their HP left, which I only found out now, but this does not affect their effectiveness all that much. Tainted Treants are also now decent blockers, since they received whopping 80% armor in exchange for lower HP and damage. They still lose their HP over time, so they aren't super reliable, but their cooldown can go down to as low as 13 seconds, so they are still nice to have if you have some gold left after buying other 2 upgrades. All 3 upgrades are extremely worthwhile and turn Rotten Grove into a fantastic stalling tower, which still functions like an artillery and dishes out decent, consistent damage. I mostly use Rotten Grove in northern levels, where they can deal with Draugrs very effectively, and their true damage is an absolute godsend against frozen souls. I also used it in Skullwreck Bay as a cheap alternative to Melting Furnace, while recently I tested it against Ruring and found them very good at stalling massive waves of dwarves even without any help from barracks. Plus, their cheap cost allowed me to upgrade other towers more. In short, Rotten Grove is actually useful in ReVengeance, but in its unique way. It won't do massive numbers, but cheap and reliable true damage and amazing slowing/stalling capabilities can be very handy in many stages. That was all for today. In the next video, I will discuss my favorite artillery tower in the game, War Balloon. Take care.